is it back and forth during the hearing? Or is it just that I'm going to read the questions out loud?
It can be during the hearing, but during public comment, you'll just read.
Okay.
We're live.
Where's your school committee?
All right. Yes, just so everyone knows, the school committee was in an executive session from 6 to 7, and I just imagine that executive session is running a little bit late. So they should be here any minute.
Here we go.
All right. I'm expecting some information here, but I'm not getting any yet. Oh, look at, there's a lot of people on tonight. That's great. Maybe that will be word of where they are. I think we should have our meetings online all the time. We actually get more audience this way.
There you go. I agree.
Mm.
I will say the nicest thing with the planning board ending at 10:30, I could just walk upstairs and go to bed.
I know.
I didn't have to dread the drive home and try to stay awake.
No. I really have to say again, I was so grateful to them for pushing through.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, was that wonderful to get those approved. Oh.
It was great. I mean, we had full intention of it taking 2 meetings, but we thought they'd at least touch on all 3 in one meeting and potentially answer, follow-up. But to get them all done in one meeting, that was great.
Yes, totally grateful. All right, I just sent them word that we have 26 participants, so they should hurry along. All right, they're wrapping up. feel like we should deliver some kind of presentation.
There was a question in the Q&A asking if this meeting was scheduled to start at 7 p.m. So I think we're just waiting for the school committee to return from an executive session.
Hi.
Oh, here we go.
Hi, Amanda.
How's everybody?
Great.
Good.
Yeah. You can see we have 24 attendees. Good following tonight.
Important topics tonight.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, my phone kind of blew up with text messages today after you sent that email. That's never happened before. iPhone? Nobody texted me about this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mina, you're muted.
Thank you, Susan. How are you?
Hi, Mina.
Hi, Jen. Yeah, I see Nancy. Hi, Nancy. We'll just give Meg another moment to join and then we'll get started.
Thank you. Looks like we have a good audience tonight.
We do.
We do. And Mina, I know you're going to go through the part where you read all of the legal obligations about conducting online business. But just so you know, at the bottom where there's the Q&A button, that's how people will pose their questions to us this evening. And Jen Parsons going to manage the intake of the questions.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for Meg to join and then we can get started.
So just for understanding, I clicked on the Q&A, which shows one in the, it looks like there should be one Q or A. And then when I opened it, I didn't really see any open questions. Oh, I see. I guess it's an answered one.
Yes, there was one question that came up under private, and it was asking, just so everyone knows, if all of the participants are muted. And I do believe that all of the participants are muted.
Yeah.
So are we live with all the participants right now?
Yes. So the way this works is the participants are sort of sitting in a virtual audience and they can see us. We can only see their names. So if they do have a comment to make during public comment, they type it in and Jen reads it. And then if they have a question during the hearing for school choice, they can be interactive with us.
I don't know if Meg is having some issues or she needs the email. Is someone able to send her the link?
I can do that, Mina. Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. Gamna.
sure thing.
Just is the link that we all received, did we all receive unique links because we're considered panelists in this setup?
Oh,
Let me just
That-
see if she can look for it by Ashok.
okay.
I think she might have. You can try sending it to her too. It may work, but I think we might have unique links.
I think you're right, Jen.
I sent her mine, but maybe it won't work. Yeah.
It does say the link is unique to each of us.
Okay, I won't do that then.
Our apologies to all the participants. Hopefully in the next minute or so, we should get started.
Do you want to begin reading through the legalese?
Yeah,
It's listed as Amanda. There are two Amandas.
Uh-oh.
That's okay.
Georgette has sent another link to Meg.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you, Jen. I guess I waited because one of the requirements of the remote participation is to call out member names. So as a preliminary matter, I am Meena Bharat, Chair of the Hopkinton School Committee. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. All members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Nancy, Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Jen Devlin,
Yes.
Amanda Farciano.
Yes, my screen name is spelled incorrectly, just an FYI.
Okay,
It should be Amanda.
okay. Meg Tyler,
Yes, I have to figure out how to get in here. I never received a link for this, so
okay.
It's under Amanda's.
Susan Rothermick,
Yes.
Jen Parson,
Yes.
Dr. Carol Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Dr. Kavanaugh, are we expecting anyone else?
No, this will be the panel, and anyone who signs in will be an attendee.
Great. This is an introduction to the remote meeting. Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Hopkinton School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Hopkinton School Committee is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one of or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website with the web meeting calendar unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Some ground rules for the meeting. We are going to turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And as many of you might know, we are returning from our executive session. And I'd like to request all those present and willing to please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to request a motion to open the public hearing for school choice.
So moved.
A motion by Nancy,
Second?
second by Amanda. We'll do a roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Meg.
My name is not Amanda, it's Meg.
So Meg, are you a yes or a no? Or
I'm a yes.
okay, great. Thank you. I'm a yes as well. And so now we have the public hearing for the school choice open. Do we have any members of the public who would like to make a comment or question?
There are no questions in the Q&A box right now.
Okay, did we receive any via email? Any comments on this, Dr. Kavanaugh,
I have not.
or any other members? Okay. I know in the past we have talked about this a little bit with regard to school choice. Last year too, with the growing enrollment that we have. Is there a recommendation that you have, Dr. Kavanaugh, in this regard?
Yes, I would recommend that we do not take part in school choice for the 2021 school year. School choice is usually something done by school districts that have the means to absorb additional students and who might be in need of that revenue. But I don't think that absorbing additional students in the Hopkinton Public Schools would be a wise choice at this time.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the recommendation made by Dr. Kavanaugh?
I think actually we have school choice under new business in the second part of the meeting.
Okay, all right. So I guess we will get to that at that point in time. And if we don't have any further questions, I'd like, no questions at this point, right, Ms. Parson? Okay, I'd like to request a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
A motion by Nancy, second.
Second.
Second by Amanda. Roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Amanda,
Aye.
Jen,
Yes.
Meg.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries, and we're closing the public hearing. Moving on to recognitions. Are there any recognitions?
Now, other than just to say that the teachers and administrators are still working hard to deliver remote instruction, and I just want to recognize those efforts. They have been amazing. And I didn't know how we would be feeling at the middle or the end of May, and I think that we've still got it. So thank you to those people who are working so hard every day.
Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. To you, to the entire administrative team, the teachers, parents, we're all in it together for sure.
Thank you.
And we are very fortunate in our district with what everybody has been able to pull together and roll out on behalf of our students.
Mhm.
That's great. Next, any other recognitions from anyone? Right, moving on to the next item, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
There are no questions or comments in the Q&A section at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Parson. I did not receive any comments either via email. Dr. Kavanaugh, you or Nancy or any members?
I have not.
Okay, great. So we'll move right into reports. The first item on the agenda, FY 2021 budget update, Ms. Rothmick.
Sorry, the host has disabled attendees screen sharing.
Uh-oh. Georgette, is it possible for you to change that? Are you the host or is Ashok the host?
I'm the host. I'm trying to do that now. I thought I had that set up earlier.
Okay.
The first time.
Thanks, Georgette.
I apologize. I'm calling a show because I can't find it.
Do we want to take anything out of order while we wait?
That's what I was thinking, and I was thinking perhaps we can look at new business, item A, school choice, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. Okay. So each year, you know that under Mass General Law, we're required to review school choice, and the school committee will vote to either have school choice or to reject school choice. It is my recommendation that we do not offer school choice in the town of Hopkinton. And as I had said just a few moments ago, we have just under 4,000 students right now. And when I say just under, I mean like 3 or 4 students under 4,000. And we are in the process of hiring teachers to be able to accommodate the kids who are just in front of us today. So I would recommend that the committee vote not to engage in school choice for the 2021 school year.
Looking for a motion, unless there is a discussion, anyone wants to make any thoughts, comments? Any members? Okay, looking for a motion to not participate in school choice for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Motion by Jen,
Second,
Go ahead, Nancy.
by Nancy. We'll do a roll call vote. Nancy,
yes.
Amanda,
Aye.
Meg,
Aye.
Jen.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and so that carries. Do we have the matter resolved, Georgette?
Yes, she texted to say she has.
Oh,
So is
great.
Ms. Rothermick able to share the report now?
Looks like I should be able to.
Okay, great. So we're back on agenda item 7A under reports. Ms. Rothermick.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. So tonight, we'll be giving you an update of where we are with the FY21 budget. Things have changed since we started the budget process almost a year ago back in September. And we thought we had gotten to the finish line, but apparently not. So I can't seem to move it. Oh, there it goes.
There you go.
All right, just to refresh everyone's memory, back in January, the school committee had passed a budget request of $52,309,719. It was an 8.9% increase. Looking at the salaries, the contractual obligation increase was 1.7 million and staff requests were 1.8 million for a total salary part of the budget of 41 million. The 1.8 million of staff requests was 13.5 classroom teaching, 8.6 for student services, 1.5 administrative, 1.2 social emotional, 4.0 for support. That was across 6 different departments, 3.0 for building and grounds, and 1.0 for technology. The expense budget had increased by $614,000. And running through quickly, that had consisted of transportation, technology, building and grounds, student services, central office, regular education, athletics, special education tuition, and vocational tuitions had actually had a decrease based on student changes. So that's what made up the increase of the 614,000. So again, the school committee had approved the budget request of 52 million at an 8.9% increase. In working with the town in what is able to be funded based on projected revenues coming in, the school committee and the select board had agreed in March to a lesser request of 51 million, which was an 8.2% increase. So that was a reduction of 323,000 from the original budget that was approved in January. That was the solution where we were in March. We were looking to put together what that reduction of 323,000 would be, but we had not brought that back to the committee as of yet. And of course, as everyone knows, after March 10th, everything changed. So this is a slide that you're familiar with. These are all the puzzle pieces where everything really became broken apart with that economic downturn, and the introduction of the COVID-19 has really turned the world, including Hopkinton, upside down. So all departments were tasked with a review of their fiscal year 21 budgets. Basically, everybody went back to the drawing board. The focus was to be on the classrooms. The focus again was on maintaining instructional quality. We were looking to reduce and eliminate any one-time purchases that were in FY21. Also to review our other funding sources and look at deferring capital projects. So to stay as far away from the classroom as possible, we started on the expense side and looking through, again, the strategy that we talked about at the last school committee meeting was what were those one-time purchases that were budgeted for 21 that we could potentially buy in FY20, but would not have an impact on FY22. So this was really a 3-year look in how to solve this next budget year. So these are some of the reductions: student services, regular education, athletics, and special education tuitions. So in going back, we were able to reduce that increase by 332,000. So what did that mean? Student services had a reduction of 8,812. That represented student desks set up for the new preschool room that is needed for FY21 and curriculum materials. And the strategy to cover that was through purchasing it this year in FY20. Regular education, we were able to make a reduction of $112,000. That represented textbooks and curriculum of 57,000, furniture, tech and engineering kits, classroom trade books. Of those buckets, Hopkins was 12,000, the middle school was 20,000, and the high school was 23,000. And again, that we looked at and were purchased in FY20, and also some were through grants. Athletics, the strategy was simply just try to figure out how to level fund. So Rich Cormier, our athletic director, will be going through line by line and figuring out how he can level fund and reduce his budget by 11,000. And he is identified those and is comfortable with those changes. And special education tuitions, as we always know, special education can break on a dime. And we had some changes in student needs that broke in our direction in our favor for a change of 200,000. So that was very lucky for us. Next, we looked at the salary items. And again, the message really was to stay as far away from classroom teachers as possible. So you'll see that we looked at a reduction of 2.0 in classroom teaching, and then went to the other lines of social emotional, a reduction of 1.5, the support departments of 5.7, building and grounds of 3.0, and technology of 1.0. So these reductions represent a decrease of 13.2 FTEs from that original request of that 1.8 million of new staff requests. So how did we do that? Classroom teaching, 1.0 reduction. The high school original request was for 1.4 FTE. Of that 1.4, we've actually already hired a 1.0. So it represents a cut of 0.4 of that original request. But in addition, 0.6 of that 1.0, we are going to move to a grant. So of that 1.0, we can cut an additional 0.6. So of the 1.4, we're actually cutting 1.0, but 1.0 is actually being hired, if that makes sense to everyone, if you follow that. Student services and a reading specialist. Through attrition, we have a moderate special education position open, and we will fill that by transferring a gen ed reading specialist into that role. And the caseload does support this decision. Social emotional, we're cutting the request of the adjustment counselor at Marathon and Elmwood and eliminating an existing 0.5 FTE. The additional intensive classrooms will cover these needs. The support departments, 5.7 FTEs. That's cutting the middle school guidance, athletic, and building and grounds administrative support request, the business office and human resources positions that were requested, and an additional Hopkins 2.0 FTE general education paraprofessional that was hired this year was not part of that new request staff. So the Hopkins felt that with the classroom teachers, they're comfortable with the reduction of those general education FTEs. Building and grounds, it's the reduction of the 3 FTEs that were requested for custodial, and technology, the 1.0 requested webmaster. So monetarily, that is cutting the requested salary staff from 1.8. It's a reduction of 620,000 to bring that requested salary down to 1.2 million in new positions. The last place that we were looking are all of our other funding sources. Again, from the last meeting, we had talked about taking some of the money that was expended out of these revolving accounts and pulling them back into the FY20 budget to cover our loss of revenue and to really make sure that these funding sources are available for FY20 and FY22. So through the renegotiation of the transportation contract, we were able to save money in that bus fee revolving. So there's comfort level in increasing that appropriation for FY21 by the 50,000. Circuit breaker, also, we were able to move some of that was charged back to FY20, and that allowed us to have more of a balance in circuit breaker available for FY21. So it's an increase of our other funding sources by $150,000. So to bring that all back together, again, our contractual obligations don't change at the 1.7 million. The staff requests have been reduced from 1.8 million down to 1.2, again, staying as far away from the classroom as possible. Expense increases has decreased from 614,000 down to 281. However, those purchases and the strategy, those needs have been covered, and it will be used to address the students in the classroom. And then finally, looking at increasing those other funding sources. So that enabled us to bring the budget down to a 51,206,000, or a 6.6% increase at this time. So we have been working very closely with the town officials, and they are going to try at this point to also work towards this number. We're all working together in this, and no one knows what the state budget will be. But this is a number that we have looked at and are going to try to move forward and try to have this funded for the FY21 budget. Lastly, and part of the strategy of trying to ensure that budgets are fundable, is looking at a deferral of our capital plan. So as a reminder, what is on that capital plan is the roof replacement, the HVAC district-wide, the boiler replacement, a vehicle, system-wide security upgrades, system-wide technology upgrades, and the district feasibility study, the White House exterior, and the wetlands order of condition. So the thought in deferring capital is, when we're looking at the potential of an unknown of what the state budget will be, there's a good probability that this budget will be funded with one-time money. So the town will make some assumption as to what the state funding will be. If the money comes in below that, then the town may look to some of the free cash or other one-time money to fill that gap of what they were trying to do to fund all of the budgets, including the school. So deferring the capital plan allows them to free up that free cash, so it's available in case they need to go to that bucket. So it's a lot of different strategies. It's a moving target. We've been working together with the town in terms of trying to make sure that the number we can all live with, it stays as far away from the classroom as possible. There is most likely going to be one-time money that will fund this budget, but this is where we are at this time.
Questions from members?
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for doing this work, Susan. I can't imagine what a nightmare it is to have to return to these numbers and cut it even more. So bravo, Carol and Susan, for this. There's a reduction of 1.5 for social emotional. And I wonder if we could just talk a little bit about that, the full-time position. Because in the wake of the pandemic, et cetera, that just makes me feel a little nervous, but I'm sure there's a good explanation for it.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. Both Mrs. Carver and Mrs. DeBow at Elmwood and Marathon had asked for an additional 0.5 FTE in a school adjustment counselor. And Mrs. Carver currently has a 0.5 school adjustment counselor already in her building. When we were looking at some of the reductions that we were going to make, and as you know, some of these would eventually have to get close to personnel, we were trying to keep away from the classroom But one of the things that we are lucky to have is we have guidance counselors, we have school psychologists, we have BCBAs in those buildings. And so what the thinking is that at least for a year, those people are going to be able to offer our students the social emotional support that is necessary at those grade levels. And we have a very good sense of who our clientele are for next year. So we're feeling like we are in a place where we could let go of those positions as opposed to touching the classroom proper, so to speak.
That's great. Thank you so much. And just a little bit of clarification, because I know that this question will come from CPAC folks. Transferring the general education reading specialist into the role of moderate special educator.
Mhm. So the plan right now is to have that happen at the 6th grade level. So any of the students who are coming from Hopkins who still need some reading support, it would be advantageous to us if those students could be part of her special education caseload. So we're kind of hoping that the kids who need it will still get some reading support. And the other thing that Mr. Keller has done at the middle school, in 6th grade, every student gets a double block of literacy. So you have an ELA block, and then you also have a literacy reading writing block. And that happens every single day. The kids are getting sort of the double dose. So we have really bolstered reading instruction at the middle school. So we're feeling a little bit more comfortable about taking someone who is a reading specialist and moving that person into the role of a moderate special educator.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question and a quick comment, but I'll ask the question first. So in our last meeting, we talked about how, and Susan, you made a fantastic presentation about how we've managed to save money in some areas, but we're losing money in other areas as a result of the buildings being closed. But one of the takeaways for me after last week's meeting was that, there may be some money left over from this year's budget for next year, and that money would be returned to the town so that it could be held in free cash, and we could use it to help things running in that 112 budget situation that we'd be in until we have town meeting. So I guess my question is, and I didn't get this from the presentation when I looked at it myself, so I'm sorry I didn't send this question to you sooner. But how will, if we make a lot of purchases, which I think is a wise decision, how does that affect our sort of interim operating budget between June 30th and town meeting?
So it won't. Basically, the 1/12 budget, what we do is based on the FY20 budget. What we have to do is look at our estimated expenditures that will happen during the month of July. So for the school department, July and August, it's really supplies that are being procured for the classroom, supplies that are being procured for fall sports, then the typical utilities and things like that. But we'll estimate what that will be, and then together with the town, their estimate, then that is presented to the Department of Revenue. So we say that as a town, the town of Hopkinton will need, X million to run July. Then we'll need X million to run August. Really, it gets a little more complicated when it gets to September, because then that's when teacher salaries and everything kicks in. So obviously the need for that 1/12 in September is much higher than July and August. On the town side, I also do believe that they have a debt payment. So, these months will go up and down, but strategizing and pulling some of these one-time purchases into 20 for things that we know we need for the students that will be returning in September will not affect that 1/12 budget, if that makes sense to you, Jen.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Thank you. And then the other thing, it's kind of a comment, but I think it's important that folks know that, when we created the budget that we initially passed way back when, January, we talked a little bit, and I was kind of obsessed with the whole sort of trickle down effect of our student growth and how, the classroom teachers are the folks who are face to face with the kids. But, we asked for 3 additional custodial staff because our standard of cleanliness was being, I don't want to say compromised, but certainly had to be adjusted in response to the increasing number of kids who are walking through the hallways and using the bathrooms and just being in the building. And the social emotional support that Meg brought up, our teachers and our principals were handling it, but it was sort of in addition to the job that they already had. So it's, I think it's important that the webmaster, this is something that's been put off for several years in a row. And I think, I understand things need to be adjusted for this year, but that wasn't something that we thought would be nice to have. It was something that we really felt we needed to have. And so to not have it again next year, I think it does impact the schools. And I think also too, just the admin support. So many of our administrators are doing a tremendous amount of work that is their job, their primary focus, and then so much of the sort of paperwork and all these things that an admin support would be so helpful with, to give them the opportunity to free up some time to be more face to face with the faculty and with the students. And so, I appreciate the enormous amount of work that went into this. This is huge. But I think it's really important. It's awesome to see we have almost 30 people still in the audience here today, and folks who might be watching. These were things that we needed, and we're responding because we need to respond. But I think it's important that folks are really, really aware of the fact that these weren't things that were optional before. These are things that we're going to feel like everybody feels, adjustments that have to be made for next year. And that, when things settle down, we're going to want those things back, because I think those are really, really important for the students in Hopkinton. So, I appreciate all that you did. Like Meg said, it must have been a nightmare. And I think we're gonna get through this. It'll be okay. But I think, there's some really, really hard decisions that had to be made. And those are 3 big ones that jump out at me.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of work obviously done by the administrators to go back and really redo all their budgets and really examine how to make this work, but also in working with the town and making sure that the most important thing we can do is move forward with the school year in September. We need to plan. We need to know what teachers are going to be standing in front of kids. We need to schedule. Kids need to know who their teachers are. So that layer had to get done and settled as soon as possible. And while all of these other requests you will see come back, you're right about that. The other thought is that this budget, most likely will be funded based on assumptions. And depending on where things land, there will either be more or less one-time funding. There is still the possibility that maybe midway through the year, we can look back at some of these positions and maybe bring some of them on midway, depending on where the funding level comes in. But what we really needed to do was settle the teaching, settle the classrooms, settle the children, and move forward with school as we know it, and try to continue to march on. But the town does need to know that the one-time funding for any budget sets up a difficult time for the next budget year as well. So
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can just clarify a little bit about the building principals. At this point in the year, what's happening in our schools is the principals are getting ready to do placement. So they're looking at the kids in front of them and realizing they're going to send them to the next grade level. And, we're all building schedules. So if you think about the high school, for example, you can't build a master schedule unless you know how many sections of social studies you have, for example, and you don't know how many sections of social studies you have unless you know how many FTEs you have. So it was really important for us to work with the town and to ensure that we had numbers of faculty in place right now to be able to move forward to the next school year.
Amanda, you have some questions?
Susan, could you just help us understand where the 1.4 target number came from? Is it targeting a certain percent increase? Is there a reason why that is the number?
So the original request was made up of several small requests. So I believe it was a 1.0 English history mix, and then there was a 0.2 and a 0.2.
Sorry, no, I meant the $1.4 million cut, the target budget reduction from the town.
There really was not a directive of a certain amount of money. It was do as best you can to get as low as you can and stay as far away from teaching as you can. That was really, and so, I went back and forth with Tim O'Leary, the town CFO, basically trying to get down to a number. And so he knows what my number is now, and that's the number he's going to try to use in different funding assumptions. So the town didn't say you need to get to X. We just did it the best we could, staying as far away from classrooms as we could.
And I echo everyone's sentiments on just gratitude for how much effort and sacrifice went into coming up with these numbers, because this was not easy for you to come by. I know that. That said, I mean, I've sent a lot of comments off to Dr. Kavanaugh and to you, but I just, personally, I am extremely uncomfortable with this budget. And I think when we voted the budget in March to reduce by 323,000, we didn't have a unanimous vote then. And a lot of that was based on the fact that we were cutting into the flesh, not fat on this budget. And we were building a budget that was relying on Legacy Farms funding, which we, assuming, again, the revenue side isn't necessarily our purview, but it is actually money that we are expecting to fund the original budget. Now we're trying to cut an additional amount of money, and I just can't put the pieces together in my mind. I mean, we're in a place where we built our budget based on the crowded schools and classrooms with the students in front of us. And we have been asking our teachers and our staff to work at full tilt without relief for multiple years of growth. And we had tried to hope it was the blip, or maybe we could get through it. And we've had like heroic activity going on in classrooms across the district. And now we're in a position where not only are we not giving the extras necessarily that we asked for to even get back to normal with our student body, with the 4,000 enrollment plus that we're going to be facing, but we're in times that are extremely volatile. So we have families and students and teachers who have been guiding it out, again, heroically through the spring to get through this cycle, learn how to do virtual education, etc. We're facing a fall where we are going to have students coming back to school with varied experiences from the spring. No, we're going to have to fill in some holes that were left from this spring's curriculum, doing the best we can to deliver, what's critical, but there are certainly curriculum elements that are not being delivered that were planned on just because we had to pare down. So teachers are going to be asked to have a varied student body, still a very large student body, come in with emotional burdens and stress, family stress. We don't know yet if we'll be open or virtual or part virtual, parts, synchronous, asynchronous. We have no idea what the learning environment will be in September. We don't know if we're going to even be busing students. We don't know what we can do. And what we do know for a fact is that we need clean schools. We need good hygiene. We need those custodians, absolutely, just to keep things normally running at a standard level of cleanliness, but then to do the disinfectant job that has to be done, whether it's each time someone uses a bathroom or how are we going to maintain. I mean, just going into the grocery store, we see people wiping down carts and wiping down that kind of cleanliness. If that's where we are, we're going to need this head count. I mean, this is just not a year that I can see us cutting adjustment counselors that we knew. We heard a very strong case from the elementary principals about the adjustment counselors and the fact that they can't address the issues at a part-time work level. And all of the needs, the student needs, the family needs, the education needs, there are a few of the cuts I can see, but many, many of these cuts make me extremely uncomfortable. I just do not see how this can work. And for this particular year with all of the volatility, I just can't see exactly how this can work. I don't know. I really appreciate the effort. I'm sure all of you feel the same way. I just, having heard all of the budget presentations in a good, in the back, way back in the fall when life was merry and grand, and now looking at what we're facing for this coming fall, and should a second wave come? How do we address? I mean, it's just not the year to be taking away the teachers and support staff that we need. And I look at like HR, you think, oh, well, that's not a classroom position. When we're looking at staff members who may have to care for family members, who may be having to take advantage of, and maybe they're sick, maybe they need leave time. I mean, we already had a strong HR need. We're now adding HR complexity where the rules are changing on a daily basis. We're getting new guidelines from the government, from legal guidelines. So I just worry about what seems to be not affecting sort of the heart of the district because it's HR or it's a side support role. These are critical functions that, especially in times of crisis, which we are in, we need the HR, we need the IT role. I mean, where would we be with virtual learning without the IT department right now? And yes, it was a half-time webmaster, half-time student data person, but I can't even imagine what Ashok and his team have had to go through to support this spring. So I don't know. I don't. We're going to end up being where we need to be, but I just do not feel like this is a budget that can serve our community the way we need to do it in the fall. That makes me comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Amanda. None of this is ideal. With the state economics, the funding level to the town or to any community is just completely out the window. And, the only thought is going after the one-time funding sources, even to do what we're doing. And the only next bucket would be to look to an override to try to fund back at the level where we are. But as you stated, so many people in town are not in a good financial place. So, I mean, we can only do what the funding will allow. And in this environment, it's not ideal. And again, we're trying to stay as close to the children as possible. But we do have to come up with a budget, and we do have to continue to do business. So you're right, it's not ideal. The economic times are not working in our favor, and it may not be a one-time solution. It may be, a multiple year problem. So we're trying to move forward as best we can. These are all needs of the district. You're absolutely right on that. But this is where we are in terms of what can be funded at this time.
And how does this relate to the 2 million or so Legacy Farms money that has been billed that we are waiting for payment on?
So basically the funding will come from all different sources. So as I said, Tim O'Leary now is charged with coming up with different strategies. There'll be, an assumption on the tax levy. There'll be an assumption on free cash that is available. There'll be an assumption on the state funding that comes through. And then to fill those holes will be, one-time sources. Do we need to pull from free cash, and how much? Do we need to pull from Legacy Farms revenue, and how much? So all of that will become part of that puzzle. The funding piece of it is not what we do, as you said, but we're working very closely in terms of putting forward a number that the town feels confident they can fill with various strategies. And I don't think that strategy is clear right now because we just don't know what the state will do, which is why town meeting has been pushed until September, to try to have the best information possible So how this gets funded will get more clear as the months go on, but right now that's not clear just yet.
Other questions, comments?
Can I make a comment? Is that okay?
Yes, of course, Nancy.
So I just want to say to echo both what Meg and Amanda had said. I know that a lot of work went into trying to pare this down. I was one of the two dissenting votes when we passed our budget back in March, because I had concerns about making the cuts that we did. However, I know that was a different time, and to be in a position where we could be looking only at that little over 300,000 would be a really nice place to be at this point. But I think none of these cuts are ideal, obviously, but I think we're looking at potentially millions of dollars less in state aid that the town is going to get this year. And I'm really concerned about how else we would be able to do this without making some significant cuts now. Without making cuts that would cut further in. I know we really wanted the webmaster position, especially because we have such a beautiful new website. But when I look at kind of holding that up against a teaching position, I would choose the teaching position every time. Even though I know the entire technology department has worked tirelessly to support all the technology through these virtual learning times, I don't know that we have better choices, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think that's just it. I think everyone has worked really, really hard. The technology department, everyone who works in curriculum has worked really hard. Building principals have not only transitioned how they are teaching and working with their teachers, but they've had to go through the budget process one more time. And so all of this has been sort of an astronomical amount of work for everyone in our whole organization, and yet they've done it, and they've done it well. And I think that when they are looking at the personnel that they're going to have in their buildings this year, there's I guess a very disappointed confidence that they can make it work. So would we love to have all of those positions? Yes. And is it going to be a strain? It absolutely is. But I think given the constraints of the state budget, the federal budget, and what trickles down to Hopkinton, I think we're kind of we're cautious, but I think that we are probably not in a bad place in terms of teaching and learning because we've insulated the classrooms.
Dr. Kavanaugh and sorry, Amanda.
No, go ahead.
Dr. Kavanaugh and Ms. Rothermake, I have a few questions. One related to process, which I think Dr. Kavanaugh, you were just mentioning. Typically, our budget process runs for months, right? And to cut all of this, what was the process? Who all was involved? Were all the directors involved in these conversations? What's the feedback? What are their thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, as you can see, the building principals, each gave up a little bit. But I would agree with you, Mina, that it's the directors who have given up a lot, right? So Mr. Ghosh has given up half of a webmaster and half of someone who would work in data. And Kim Polnick in HR has given up 0.7 of positions. Mrs. Rodmick has given up 0.5 of a position. So everyone, Tim Person has given us three custodians. So it's that group of directors who have given up all of that support. Our athletic director has given up a half secretary request. All of those positions are the ones that they're behind the scenes. So when you look at the school district next September and you look at class size and say, oh, that's wonderful, I only have 22 kids in my child's third grade class, people will think this is great. But what they don't see is how hard all of the people in those director and central office kinds of positions are working and working and working to keep the ship afloat. And that's really how it trickles down. It's all that sort of behind the scene where people don't have a sense of just how flimsy the infrastructure is because of a cut like this.
Mm-hmm. So they have all been involved in all of these conversations and they think this is manageable or doable.
We have weekly central office meetings once a week. since the onset of the pandemic, once a week we've had building principal meetings, and twice a month we have what we call administrative council meetings where there are all 20 of us. So yes, we keep having these conversations. And I think that historically in education, if you've been in public education for a long time, you know that this is the response in dire financial times, right? We preserve the classroom and we look to some of those other support positions. So I am sure that, Tim Person and Kim Polnick and Mr. Ghosh, Ashok Ghosh, they're all people who are disappointed by these losses, but I think that they understand them.
Okay. The other question I have is right now we are talking about an overall budget increase of 6.6% from last year. Now, when we had the last meeting on budget and, we had kind of signed and sealed the deal, we felt fairly comfortable with where we were. And one of the things that we had talked about was about $500,000 from the HCA money being used into or being applied towards operational, which is typically not something we do with one-time funds. Now, do we have any idea of how much are we anticipating on that front if we have billed $2 million to the builder? What is the possibility of that number going up? Is there any breakdown available? I understand that the state aid reductions are anticipated. So I just want to understand how the HCA funding plays into all of this.
Yeah, and Susan, you may have a better sense of how on the town side they plan to, collect and distribute this kind of money.
Yeah, so as I had just mentioned, the actual funding scenario and what buckets will be used has not been determined just yet. So Tim O'Leary will be looking at an assumption on state aid, an assumption on the tax levy, an assumption on one-time cash from all sources, free cash, anything coming from any stabilization, anything from the legacy farms payment. So that work is really only in the very infant stages. So it'll be a while before we know what all the answers will be as to how this gets funded.
Okay, I feel like there's still some, there is some clarity needed on that front, and I'm thinking that this will continue to be a work in progress with regard to some of that. Is that a fair statement?
Well, the school committee's job really is to pass the budget that is responsible for the school district. The actual funding is not the purview that really is on the town side.
That's fair, Susan. I guess what we had passed was an 8.9% increase, right? And while we're trying to understand all of this, we do have a chunk of, one-time money, which would be under the school committee's purview, which is the HCA money, right? And that's what I'm trying to understand about as to how we apply that and use that. Now, I get it, where our purview is and where we partner, and I'm very, very appreciative of the work that Mr. O'Leary does and Mr. Kumalo does, and I know you work with them and you have worked very hard to put all of this together. This is not easy. I get that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the work. I'm just trying to ask about the application of the HCA money, which is related to growth. And it is the growth which is pushing our needs here, right? Now, the other question I have for you is, in all of this, the very premise of how education will be conducted and any shift in needs as a result of that, how much of that is built into this new updated version? For instance, we are all on Zoom. Does the technology department need a different role now? Amanda talked a little bit about social emotional, and I know you're trying to do a lot of, I saw your details around grants and how you're shifting some of those aspects. I understand all of that. So I just want to understand if our assumptions for how business will be conducted come September, how they're going to shift, how much of that is part of the assumptions here?
Well, I'll speak to the legacy farms just quickly, because as I said, right now, the exact funding of how this will get done is unknown. When we do have a proposal from the town, and if it does include some of the HCA money, that absolutely would be brought back to the school committee, so that you would be fully cognizant of what may be part of that funding scenario. But we don't have that information for tonight. So that's where we are right now in terms of just looking at this budget. And I'm sure Carol can speak to the future of the schools.
Yeah, I think when you see my report tonight, you'll see that a lot of the questions that I think you're driving at, Mina, are unanswerable at this point in time. So, for example, what if the governor tells us 25% of our kids can come back into the schools each day? So now what happens is, we have to think about, are we going to feed those kids, or are they going to, or are we not going to feed them while they're in our schools? Are we going to do something prepackaged where they'll sit in a classroom and eat? How much money should we set aside for PPE? How much money should we set aside for changes to transportation? All of those kinds of questions related to budget and services, we really don't have those answers right now. There are lots of people around the state, public health officials, the governor, the commissioner, several superintendent groups that are all thinking about those things. And we're really doing that within the context of all of the available literature that's out there right now. So that's where we are. And I think, we have this budget, and it's, largely centered, I think, on putting FTEs in front of kids. But at the same time, there may be a lot of surprises for us in September that are unforeseen right now.
I guess my hesitation comes from there, really, that with so much unknown and without putting some assumptions around these recommended changes, I feel uncomfortable looking at these changes. Perhaps, that social emotional takes a different shape. Perhaps that webmaster is not needed, but some other support is needed. I don't know what it might be. I feel like we need to reevaluate assumptions around how education will continue, if not for the entire year, but we need to think about the first quarter.
Sure.
And we need to have those assumptions listed, that these are the assumptions we are going with, and that's how we are coming up with this budget. Because tomorrow, as the assumptions shift, will we still be bound by all of this? Those are things to think about. So that's my take on all of this. I really appreciate all of you working so hard. And likewise, our town partners, I think they're working hard. Everybody at every level, there's a lot of unknown for all of us, and even as families. Everyone's worried about how things would be. At the same time, at a leadership level, my hope is that we list out assumptions and work towards not just education, but also some of the support that goes along with it. For our teachers, do they need anything extra? Do they need any emotional support? How is that needed? Things of that nature. I think there's, and for you, Dr. Kavanaugh, I feel you might need a break.
Hang it
I think you have been on 24/7 for a very long time now. And I think we all need a break. And I don't know how all of this is going to pan out. So some assumptions need to be built in. And I think we need to make time for ourselves and self-care at all levels.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask a process question where we go from here? This came to us interestingly today. We weren't really sure. I guess I didn't realize that we were at this point. So now we're at this point where we've proposed where we could find this money, and we've shared this with the town. Where do we go from here? When does this become a number that we would be asked to support but before town meeting? What is the meaning of this number right now? Because I guess if it were me, I would, advocate that a few of these cuts be reconsidered and maybe look in some other places. But I mean, where are we with this right now? Is this kind of a concept or is this a real thing?
As
But-
far as the administrators go, I think they see this as a real thing.
I mean, we haven't voted this. The five of us haven't. It's the first we've seen it. We didn't, it's the first the five of us have even heard of the $1.4 million request. So, which apparently wasn't a request of an amount of money, but it was a request to do the best you can. And I think clearly we have done yeoman's work to try to find the most we can find. So this is not real for us until we vote it. And I think we have to figure that, like, what is the process to get there?
I think right now, like I said, this number, Tim O'Leary is going to work on different funding scenarios and see based on different assumptions where that all fits, so we keep talking about puzzle pieces because there's a lot of moving parts. So I think once he has had an opportunity and probably the Dr. Kavanaugh and I and the town leaders talk about what that looks like and what their assumptions are, at some point the number becomes the number. And, it's something that we would reintroduce to the school committee and have further discussion. And you're right, this is just a report tonight. This is just to show you what the administrators feel comfortable with. It's a need to move forward. It's a need to know what staff is in classrooms. And again, the administrators are comfortable with what we have put forward. I know there's a discussion about, looking at supports for teachers. Well, that's, what Ms. Parsons is doing, looking at grants and looking at all these supports. So all these things are happening. It's not new information for us. It's not new information for the building principals. They're all looking at this and they feel comfortable they can make this work. So, but it will come back to the committee for further discussion and for a vote. I don't have timing on that. But in terms of process, now it's a matter of looking at the fundability of where this is.
Yes, and the reason I say that this is very real in the administrators' minds is that they are in a place now where they are looking to begin the hiring process and get teacher contracts signed so that they can get teachers in classrooms for September. We always say the earlier that you interview people and get them on board, the better quality of the candidate. But I do think that in a year like this, where every district is going through the same financial, if not worse, financial problems than we are, then you probably don't have as much competition, I think, in recruiting really good staff. But that said, our building principals do need to hire people so that they can get them on board and get them in classrooms for the fall. So the longer we wait with a tentative budget, the longer it takes to hire people, and the I guess less certainty as to what a grade level or a department will look like.
Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Any other questions, comments? It's about 8:25. We are running a little behind today, but hopefully we'll make up for it in some of the upcoming agenda items. Dr. Kavanaugh, your report is up next. Thank you, Ms. Rothermick, for putting that together and walking us through.
Thank you.
Dr. Kavanaugh, you're next with your report, item B.
Okay, I assume you can all see that, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will start out with some messages of congratulations. As the community knows, our assistant principal at the high school, Josh Hanna, has accepted the position of being the next principal of Franklin High School. He is certainly a very prepared and worthy candidate, and for one, will miss him, and I am sure that the entire admin team, Mr. Bishop, Mr. Pominville, and the teachers at the high school are going to miss him terribly. We really are grateful for all that Josh has done and brought to Hopkinton High School in the many years that he has been here, and we do wish him luck. We have said to him repeatedly, we know we'll hear from you, and of course we will, and we'll be keeping in touch with him. But congratulations to Josh on his principalship. That's great news.
Congratulations indeed.
The next round of congratulations goes to Hopkinton High School Science Fair students. We had 5 either individual entrants or team entrants. 3 took first place, 1 second place, and 1 third place. So 5 of the 9 teams at the high school won awards in what this year was a virtual science fair. So that's an amazing thing. I also have congratulations to Timothy Fargiano. He was named one of the National Merit Scholarship recipients. If you know anything about that award, they are very rare. And so as a winner, he came out of a pool of 15,000 semifinalists. So congratulations to Tim Fargiano. At Hopkinton High School, moving on to graduation. I have been working very closely with Principal Evan Bishop to think about what graduation was going to look like this year. We felt like a couple of things needed to happen, and Mr. Bishop also put out a very thoughtful survey. And what we realized were 2 things. One was that by and large, parents and students really wanted that sort of in-person, very formal graduation ceremony, which, as we all know, is not possible at this time. But we also felt like there was going to be a great void in the kids' lives if we didn't do something somewhere around May 29th, May 30th, when there would have been actual graduation. So last night, Mr. Bishop and I submitted a parade permit to the select board, and hopefully on May 30th at 1 o'clock, the class of 2020 will be taking part in a rolling parade. The parade route at this point is to get them past all 5 other schools. And so this is really exciting, and we're hoping that this is going to work out. And then on Sunday, August 2nd, with a time to be determined, hopefully we'll be able to do something that is a little bit more in person. And of course, we want to make sure that parents, families, students all realize that this is determined, by the conditions in place at that time, DPH regulations, the governor's orders, and all of that. But we're hoping that we are able to do both of those things for the class of 2020, who have missed out on an awful lot of the joys of senior year. All right, this I just couldn't resist. Last Friday, as we were going into Mother's Day weekend and coming off of Teacher Appreciation Week, as well as National Nurses Day on Wednesday, I thought I would just send a little message out to the faculty and staff. And one of the paragraphs in my message indicated that last week I had popped into a few classrooms at Elmwood, and there I found kids deeply engaged in online learning, even as one student flopped in a beanbag chair while another sat wedged between a laptop screen and an ironing board. And I thought, these really are signs of resilience. At any rate, after I sent that email to the faculty and staff, one of the teachers at Marathon sent me back this photo and said, "This is what my house looks like. I have taken my ironing board, I have lowered it, put a laptop on it, and that beanbag chair is where her own child sits to do his remote instruction in the district where they live." So I just thought that was very funny, and I asked her if I could use her photograph because I think it speaks to the times. If we want to talk about people and resilience, this is a great image of it. All right, I have some important COVID-related information. So these are, I think, what look like byproducts of COVID-19. We had done an awful lot of talking about the Student Opportunity Act and the money that came with it as part of our Chapter 70 money in the district. What we have learned in recent days is that the SOA is now DOA. And so the commissioner, through Tom Scott, has told us all that we are not to submit our SOA forms, which would have been done by tomorrow, May 15th. We will soon be learning what the extended school year or the summer program will be looking like. We're not sure if we are going to be able to have students with us face to face, if we're going to be delivering that instruction remotely, or if there will be some means to do a hybrid of the two of those models. But we will soon be finding that out from the Director of Special Education at the state level, Russell Johnston. We are going to be recipients of Hopkinton CARES Act, and our money is predicated on our Title I allocation. So the money that we'll be receiving for that is $49,000. The amount of money that we are cutting from our 8.2% voted on budget is 1.4 million. We've just spent an awful lot of time on that. There was discussion about Legacy Farms money. $831,000 was due on June 30th, 2019. But that money is now up to over $2 million, which would be a lovely little nest egg for the school department. I mean, I understand it's a one-time payment, but in these tough fiscal times, that would be great money to have. And then the last one is that schools have already begun conversations about reentry plans. And I know that this is something that community members are thinking hard about. So what I've done on this slide is I have designed this slide so that there are 4 areas that we are considering right now. Curriculum and instruction, things that are managerial like transportation, physical plants, what DESE will tell us, the scheduling needs for our schools, and then how we will address trauma when we come back. So I am going to spend a couple of minutes on this particular slide. Under curriculum and instruction, and we talked about these things as an administrative team this week, but what do we really consider to be priority learning? And I think when we went into remote instruction, we asked our teachers to do that. We asked them to think about without which, what are the things that you would never let a kid go from, say, grade 2 to grade 3, or from algebra 1 to algebra 2? So what are those most important pieces? And then the state gave us their iteration of that. And we were really proud because we thought that our what we were doing for priority learning really matched, if not exceeded, what the state had put out. So that needs to stay in place as we go into the fall. And we have to keep that in the forefront of our minds. But we also need to be thinking about, what is it that, our kids didn't get last year, and how much time will it be given in the fall for catching up students? And that's our general education students, special education students, English learner needs, all of those gaps. We need to be thinking about how we're going to fill them. And then on the chance that we're not in school at all, or if we are in and out, what changes are going to need to be made to the way we are currently teaching? Do we need more professional learning for our teachers? Do we need to, and I'll skip down to the scheduling block, think about what is the best health model for our school day structuring? And you see all kinds of schedules out there. So some people have talked about doing double sessions where you bring half the kids in the morning, and in that model, you may not need to feed them lunch, and the other half of the kids in the afternoon. Or there are models where some kids come Monday, Wednesday, some kids come Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday is devoted to professional development. Or 25% of the kids come Monday, 25% of the kids come Tuesday. We really don't know what that would look like right now, but we do know that our kids need teachers in front of them. And then another question that's out there on people's minds, I'm sure, is should the high school continue with its semester model, or does it make better sense to calculate grades quarterly? In terms of transportation and physical plants and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, what are we thinking about in terms of financial shortfalls? And we just had this conversation a moment ago. Will there be additional purchases that we need to make due to COVID-19? And that could be PPE, it could be cleaners, it could be additional buses, it could be no buses at all. We really don't know what the financials are going to look like until we actually arrive there. And I think we've just lived through the same thing. Will there be transportation restrictions? How will our classrooms and our big gathering spaces need to be physically restructured? Sometimes in the summer when our custodial staff is working very hard to clean the buildings, what will happen this year if we are restructuring classrooms so that only 8 students, for example, are sitting in one classroom? Or what happens if we make decisions about scheduling so that K to 5, all of the kids are in brick and mortar settings, and 6 to 12, they're not, for example. So K1 could still be at Marathon, but maybe grade 2 is at Elmwood, grade 3 is at Hopkins, grade 4 is at the middle school, grade 5 is at the high school. We really don't know what those physical plants are looking like. And I throw that out there, not because anything has been decided upon, but those are just models we have seen and heard about in other places. As you know, in Europe, they are bringing kids back into schools. We've talked about feeding kids. We've talked about the DPH, DESE, Governor Baker, all of those things. And one very wise superintendent said to me a few days ago, do you think schools can actually practice social distancing? And it really is hard for our kids to do that because they are such social beings. It will require a lot of restraint, especially when they haven't seen each other in a long time. And the last box is about trauma. How do we plan to mitigate trauma? What resources do we have and tools for our teachers and for our families and for our students? Another question, are parents going to be willing to even send their children back to school? You know, some parents who are leery of putting their kids back into that kind of a setting may say, I don't want my child in school with the potential to catch the coronavirus. And then how will we plan for significant teacher absences if we do have teachers who become unwell or who can no longer serve children for whatever reason? So we have been advised to hold on any decision making right now. And that makes great sense because we don't have answers to these questions right now, but we will need to have answers to these questions before we reach September 1st. But one of the things that we have been asked to do is to set your core values. What are the things that you genuinely believe in so strongly that those are the principles that will guide your reentry? So we also have many resources that have been available to us as we've been looking around. So something like the New York Times article, As Europe Reopens Schools, Relief Combines with Risk. NEAS just did a really nice webinar, which Mr. Bishop shared with us. So the plan is to kind of compile some of those resources so we can look to see what people are doing in Europe, in the Philippines, in different places around the world. And, you know, their learning, because it came before ours, will be very helpful to us. We also have the ability to have superintendent groups. As a superintendent, I'm part of the Education Collaborative, the Tech Collaborative, the Tri-County Superintendents, the new Superintendent Induction Program, and there's also a couple of local groups that contribute to each other's thinking. The admin team, we're very much engaged in these discussions right now and plan to grow our thinking around that. And then, of course, the Massachusetts Commissioner of Education has a working group. What we can promise you is a commitment to our core values that FaceTime for all kids with their teachers is really important to us. And if it doesn't happen in the brick and mortar setting, we certainly want it to happen virtually as it's happening right now. We are also committed, I can promise you, to the highest quality of instruction for every student in the Hopkinton Public Schools. We pledge to be sensitive to the needs of families and faculty, and we will put physical and emotional safety of our kiddos first, for sure. We also have communication values that families will be kept apprised of what's coming next. Whenever we know something new, we will share that with you. Families are going to be given ample time to make decisions about schooling for their children and will work very closely with you on those decisions. And multiple media will be used to push out information. So families will be receiving emails, newsletter, website information, Twitter, any way we can get this information to you, we will certainly strive to do that. Finally, I have included a little bit of enrollment information. This is enrollment information as of yesterday. These are the enrollment for the current year. We have 3,996 students today. You know that we were just up over 4,000. I think maybe in February we hit 4,001. So we are in kind of a holding pattern right now. I think the important thing for people to note is the numbers that come down at the bottom of this document. We have 191 new students in grades 1 to 12. When we created our budget for FY21, that budget was predicated on 113 students. No, I'm sorry, for FY20, it was predicated on 113 students. And these are the predicted numbers for next year when we engaged the services of Dr. Arthur Wagman. He had said that we would probably have 4,111 students total pre-K to 12 at the end of the 2021 school year. And so, you can see we're about 115 students off that. So if our enrollment in the coming year is fairly stable and stays at that 115, we'll be in good shape. But as you saw in the previous slide, last year we were at 191. And again, we count that from, say, June 15th, 2019 to June 15th, 2020. And finally, just a thank you to the HPTA for the Pick Me Up. Really lovely chalk drawings outside of all of our schools, thanking teachers at the end of Teacher Appreciation Week. And thank you to Sterling Worrell and Ashok Ghosh, who were able to fly the drones over this. And when they did that, it was really nice to be able to see all of this from an aerial view and all of the teachers' names out there as well. So really lovely, and thank you so much for that. And I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I can exit and undo my screen sharing.
Dr. Cabno, the first item on your slides, Mr. Hanna, it's certainly a loss for our community, but very happy for him. Congratulations to him. I'm also very glad to see all the open questions that you listed, those 4 items, your slide. I think that's very good. It gives us a sense that there are all these aspects that you're looking at, considering, and this is actually what I was asking about when I was asking with regard to the budget shifts. How would we, what are some of the assumptions, right? So with all these unknowns, we need to bake that into the revised budget, if you will. And I'm glad you just reminded us of the enrollment numbers as well.
Yes, and I think we were rebuilding the FY20 budget from March 10th on, and I think that we're still doing that. As you could see, renegotiating bus contracts and all of that. So that may be where we are in the fall.
Great, thank you. Any questions from any members? Yeah, Amanda.
Well, thank you for all that. I think that I agree with Mina. I think those slides that show the considerations in the district are really helpful. I guess I'm wondering, as our plans come into view, whether that's July or August, whenever we know what shape things are taking, will there be an opportunity for a public forum of sorts, probably Zoom based, or some opportunity for people to ask questions sort of directly face to face? And I think that would be helpful for the community. I'm sure there will be lots of questions, whatever it looks like. So I'm putting in a plug in the communication plan to have some kind of an opportunity for parents and families, maybe students, to ask questions.
Yes, what, I would really love to do some kind of public forum, and I would like to be able to, I've been working very closely also with Chief Slayman and Chief Bennett, and also Sean McAuliffe. And I think that when we do start to make these decisions, to have our emergency personnel there as well would be really helpful. Sean McAuliffe has been, since March 10th, he has been super helpful to the schools. Whenever we're doing something, we reach out, we get input from him. A good example is just this week, we've had parents doing drive-ups to kind of get their kids' belongings so that, we can plop them into the backseat of their cars and they can take them, because kids won't be coming back into our schools. But we've done that again with the guidance of the police and the guidance of Sean McAuliffe. So yes, I would like to do that. And I would like to have as many informed people at the table as we possibly could.
I also want to say a huge thank you to you and the high school staff for the graduation plans. I think the kids are, it's a really tough time for them and for the families, I'll say, but for the students in particular. And in particular, they really want to see their teachers. They really miss their teachers. They miss each other, but they also would like to say goodbye, and have closure. So I don't know how that will ever happen for them, but so much thought and care is going into their situation by the administration. It's really appreciated, and the rolling rally, I think, is going to be very fun.
Yes, and I do want to say that Mr. Bishop has, really done the lion's share of that work with his team, I'm sure, with Mr. Pominville and Mr. Hanna. So,
I do think that's great, and I don't want to miss that opportunity. Congratulations to all the kids for all their awards and recognitions. And Mrs. Fargiano, a huge shout out to Tim Fargiano. Congratulations.
So I just wanted to make a quick comment, just, I'm struck every meeting we've had really since March 10 at how heavy some of this feels. And when we're looking at decisions into the fall, it's hard to kind of grasp all of that in the decisions that are ahead of us. But I do appreciate that you're putting that all out there now, so people can kind of start to weigh that. And I agree with Amanda. I think it would be great to have an opportunity for the public to weigh in. My dogs wanted to weigh in as well.
No, I think we all looked at Susan because her dogs are usually weighing in. Thank you, Nancy.
That's great. Any other comments, thoughts? I can't see Meg. I see her now. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh, for the thorough report, as always. And the next item on the agenda, the SC Chair report. As most of you know, I've had severe illness in my family. As a result, I've not been around, and really Nancy has been covering, answering all questions for public, attending meetings, planning agenda, etc. So I think it's only fair that Nancy speaks to the chair report. Nancy, would you please?
So yes, hang on. You actually was not prepared for that
I'm sorry.
moment, and I've had to flip my screen. So I'm actually, do you mind going ahead and doing it? I just, in terms of the warrants, I don't have.
Okay, I can do those ones. Nancy has on our behalf approved warrants number 20-057 and number 20-058, and the warrants have been included in your packet. Nancy, is there any other update that you would like to share?
So just that we did meet with the Budget Advisory Committee last week, and just really kind of touching on what the previous reports were. Just it's very heavy news, and with the unknowns from the state, it is hard to kind of predict where as a town we're going. But I did feel like our town partners are committed to working with us and trying to protect our instructional experience for our classes.
Thank you, Nancy. Anything else that you want to, any other area?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Not as much correspondence between the last meeting and this meeting as there was between the two prior. So.
Thank you, Nancy. I also just want to bring up something that I had brought up, I believe, in April. This is an extended term for me and also for Jen. We had both agreed to be here until the next election. While that's something that I hope to be able to take on, like I shared, my own personal situation is such that I may need to get pulled in. And I may not be able to be there. So I just wanted to put it out to the committee, what you want to do, how we want to conduct business. Nancy has been taking on a lot of this work. I think it makes absolute sense for her to continue to be the person having the conversation, especially on the budget front, with the fact that this is an ongoing thing. This will go beyond my own term, which ends next month. Now it would have ended as of now. But it extends to next month. But I think some of this work will continue on all the way to September when we have our annual town meeting. That's my take, but I just wanted the committee to think about this. How do we want to conduct business in the interim? There might be an instance where I get pulled out and I'm not able to focus or pay the due that's required here. So I just wanted to put that thought to all of you. We can talk about it now. We can talk about it at the next meeting. It's not on the agenda at the moment. I just got back today, as you all know.
I think that, if folks feel differently, I'm open to anything, but I think that Nancy's done a really nice job. And Mina, you've been in the mix for sure, even though you were gone. I know you were still involved. So if I feel like with only 6 weeks left, if you feel like it's appropriate for Nancy to sort of be the point person, if folks want to do a vote, I'm happy to do it. But I feel comfortable with the way things have been going for the last several weeks, so that you can play a part as much as you are able to, Mina. And then we can wrap up the last several weeks with this sort of structure intact. But we can play around with responsibilities, and I know all of us are happy to help support in whatever way. I'm comfortable with the way it's been done, and giving you the flexibility, Mina, to stay as active as you're able to be.
I agree with Jen. If Nancy doesn't mind leading us forward, the less change, the better.
So
I also agree. Sorry, 1,000%. I think this is one of the reasons why we have a vice chair. And I think our vice chair and our chair, you have worked so closely together when you were both working. And now I think it's been great to have Nancy at the helm. So I agree with Jen. I would just leave it as it is. And Mina, to whatever extent your situation allows you to engage, great. Otherwise, we will fill in behind.
I would be honored to fill in your shoes wherever you need me, Mina, and to work with the rest of the committee. But I do feel like, we're on the home stretch here, and want to give you the opportunity, to finish out where you're able, but also to not ever feel pressured. We all have personal lives, and your family and your family's health and what's going on with that has always got to be at your forefront, obviously. And I think, just all want to support that.
Thank you, Nancy. I truly appreciate your help the past several weeks. It's a difficult time for us as a family, but I know it's a difficult time for everyone. So I was actually very worried about even asking for any help, knowing your work and all that goes on. And I appreciate other members checking on me, how I'm doing, how's family doing. So I really appreciate that. I guess we will play it by the year and see where we are. I don't know who said that, but we have worked closely all throughout the year. So I think we will continue to do that. I appreciate your support. I am going to lean on you. All right. Thank you. I'll just move on to the next item on the agenda, liaison reports, if there are any. I just have a quick one. There is some conversation going on the Marathon Fund Committee. They are looking at some of the applications for scholarships. That meeting is scheduled for next week. So hopefully that will come through. This is for our high school athletes. But they're also still trying to figure out how to review applications when they all come out in a printed form as with an open meeting. So that's something that's going on. Next item on the agenda of, does anyone else have any liaison reports? I'm sorry.
I have a quick one, and it's more just a sort of FYI. The Elementary School Building Committee met earlier this week, and there's no pressing news to report back to you, just outstanding invoices that are being paid as the project is gradually being closed out. So there you go, quick one.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else have anything? Okay. The next item, office hours. Did we plan anything? We're good. Okay, we're requesting all members of the public to reach out to us via email or just give us a call. If you email us, you can also get our phone numbers. We're available to you. The next item on the agenda, new business, item B, school physician's contract. Dr. Kavanaugh, we did not get a chance to speak to this a little bit. Is that something you're able to walk through now? How do we want to go about this?
No, I think that we can talk about it now. So each year, we have to renew the school physician's contract with the schools. And as you know, we use Dr. Boder and she's fabulous. And I really think that this is just sort of a perfunctory kind of an obligation here. And I think that you can see in the packet, what we pay her annually. I think it's something like just over $7,000. So, um, I don't know if you want to approve this tonight or put it on hold for a subsequent meeting.
I'm okay with approving it, but I'm happy to hear other members' thoughts.
I'm comfortable with it.
Me too.
Okay, looking for a motion then to approve the school physician's contract for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Motion by Meg,
Second?
second by Amanda. Roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. The next, and also thank you to our school physician.
Yes.
The next item on the agenda, bullying report, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay. So you know that each year, Mass General Law requires the schools to annually report any incidences of bullying and bullying reports to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so each year a report is made to the school committee indicating the numbers of reports and the numbers of findings of bullying. So you can see that there's a memo in your packet where I have outlined those things. In this school year at the Marathon Elementary School, there were 2 reports of bullying made to the building administration. They were both investigated and one was substantiated as bullying. At Elmwood, there were no reports. At Hopkins, no reports. At the middle school, there were 3 reports of bullying made. One was substantiated. There were findings of bullying. And at the high school, there was only 1 report of bullying made to the administration, and that 1 report of bullying was in fact substantiated as bullying.
There's any questions for Dr. Kavanaugh? Thoughts?
I always appreciate the report coming forward, but it does seem like our number of reports is low, and I hope that's because we don't have a tremendous amount of bullying. But I always worry about how many people are not reporting for one reason or other.
Mhm.
Although I know a lot of work has gone into the education of helping people understand the process. My hope is that this is just a good sign that we've created a good culture of prevention.
Agreed. Yes, we do have very good kids and we do have very good education around bullying prevention. So,
Now, Dr. Kavanaugh, do we offer any kind of information education to parents on how to come forward if they hear of this, or to students? Is there an education that goes around this? Any kind of awareness?
yes. So, obviously, when parents sign the handbooks and those kinds of things, the information is in there. We post it on the website. So, it does get out there in a couple of different ways each year.
Okay. And the necessary support is available to the kids and families.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this is always a challenge when someone feels or is bullied to come forward. It's not easy.
Mhm.
It's only in a supportive environment that one is able to speak up. So hopefully, to Nancy's point, this is indicative of the culture in our schools.
Yes. Yeah, and I think our building principals go a very long way to provide really safe learning environments, for the kids in Hopkinton.
Any other questions, thoughts? Okay, we'll move on. The next item on the agenda, Elmwood School Gift Account. Dr. Kavanaugh.
All right, and this is a very easy one. I am requesting that the school committee approve a check from Box Tops for Education in the amount of $187.20, and that will be going into the Elmwood School Gift Account.
Looking for a motion to approve the $187.20 check for the Elmwood School Gift Account.
So moved.
Motion by Meg, second.
Second.
Second by Jen, roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
Jen,
Yes.
I'm I as well, and so that carries. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. The next item on the agenda, we don't have any old business, future agenda items. Does anyone have any recommendations for future agenda items? Okay, saying none, we'll move on to public comments. Do we have any public comments? Ms. Parson, are you?
Yes. We have a couple of questions that have been placed into the comments box. So I have responded back to those who wrote the questions that they would need to be in the form of a statement and that they would need to identify themselves. So one came in the form of an anonymous question, and the other one is a question, but I haven't heard, I was only just responded to that person in terms of if she'd like to make the question or not. What I have done is recorded all of the questions that have been asked so I can share them with the committee and the superintendent afterwards.
That would be great, Ms. Parson. If those are questions, we can absolutely, if we have their contact information, their email specifically, we can respond to that. I think that would be the easiest.
Okay, so it would be helpful if those individuals could put their email into the.
Yes, that would be most helpful. Thank you so much, Ms. Parson, for doing this for us.
Sure, no problem.
All right.
Sorry, so just to ask this, so the anonymous attendee who wanted something read has to identify him or herself in order to have that read, just to clarify.
That is correct, right in line with our policy that, yes.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, items by consensus. Dr. Kavanaugh, I have one item that I would want to talk about a little bit on this. This is the minutes. I feel like the item related to the budget discussion, this was the joint meeting that we had. I would personally like to see more detail in there because we had asked questions about ability to secure HCA funding, comfort level with changes, how the process went working with the town partners. I feel some more detail with regard to that would be helpful because that's reflective of the conversation.
Mina, can you give me the date of that particular set of meeting minutes that you want to have up?
March 12th, Jen.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, that would be most helpful. So that's one item I would like to pull out, please.
Okay. If the rest of the committee is comfortable with that, I would recommend that the school committee approve the items by consensus, only item A and item B listed in your agenda.
Sorry. Oops. Sorry, I'm comfortable. I just had a question on item B. I was just wondering if you could just explain that item a little bit.
Susan, that's really one for you. It's the preschool tuition refunds.
Yes, so as we had indicated for preschool, we were only charging the tuition for a prorated tuition based on the number of days. So for anyone who had already prepaid or paid more than the number of days that we attended, they were refunded their money.
Any other questions? If not, looking for a motion for approval on those items, A and B, as Dr. Kavanaugh described.
So moved.
Motion by Meg, second.
Second.
Second by Amanda, roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Motion for adjournment.
Oh, yes. So moved.
Motion by Meg, and a second.
Second.
Second by Amanda. Roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda.
Aye.
I'm an I as well, and so that carries. Our next meeting will be on May 21st, 2020 at 7 p.m. via Zoom. It's a special meeting, and we will followed by a meeting on June 4th via Zoom, which should be a regularly scheduled meeting. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Continue to stay healthy and happy.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.